Okay, so I'm back from the sewing machine and I went ahead and have all my pieces stitched. And actually I forgot to, I need to go back and stitch this area here. I forgot to stitch that. But what the next thing we have to do is put some of the pieces together. Let's see where did I put my other hairline. There it is. So you take this and you are going to place right side together, and this goes here. Okay, so that's going to sew there, and see, it's going to look like that. You're going to do the same thing here. You're going to go ahead and sew right side together. Then you're going to take your leggings, and notice I forgot to do another pair of leggings here, so I'm going to have to go back and stitch another legging on here. I made a boo-boo, so I need another pair of leggings for those. Now you're going to go ahead and stitch these together, and see, I made sure that I had the pair, so when you make this, make sure that you know a thumb has to be facing each opposite side, and then you need to have it facing opposite side here when it's in upside down. Okay, so we're gonna stitch these together. Okay, so I'm going to cut another piece of legging for this. I'm going to pin everything together. I got to finish this because I made a boo-boo. I'm going to have to go back and sew here with some black thread. And then I shall be back. Okay, so now I'm over here. So let's go ahead and stitch the sides. You're not going to stitch the opening because that's going to be where I'm going to use for stuffing my legs. So I'm going to stitch the side. I'm leaving about 3/8 of an inch width for seam allowance, because it's just a small piece. You don't want to do a whole half an inch or 1/4 of an inch. So I'm doing 3/8 of an inch, just the width of my foot. Now here you're going to go very slow. We're on a curve, so go very slow. Turning your machine or turning your fabric as you go. So there, I've done one. Now let me show you how to do one of each piece. And then I'm going to do this one. This is the arm. Same seam allowance, about width of the sewing foot. Now to get perfect rounded fingers, you got to be very careful here. And I go back stitch in the thumb area because that's where it's going to have a little more stress when I turn it over. Now I'm going to show you how to do the body with the head real quickly. That's like that. Perfect. So let me go ahead and finish. I got to finish one leg, another leg, the next body, and a hand. And we'll be back, and I'm going to teach you how to stuff it and then put it together. Now we're going to address the arms. We need to stuff the arms, and we need to turn our legs and arms over before we can continue. And I'm just cutting the excess there. So I got these tubes, and these are called turning tubes, and I'll show you how to use these in a second, but these are perfect for spaghetti strap or any kind of things like this. Any kind of time you need to turn a fabric or a project, you need these. So before I turn them, right here, I got to make sure that wherever there's a curve, I need to kind of cut some lines. Or not lines, I just need to cut the fabric so that way it turns easy. And that's why I put extra stitching on the right there in the thumb area, because that way it reinforces it and it doesn't allow it to fray or break. Okay, you're going to do the same thing here. That's going to allow it to turn nicely. Okay, and you can do the same thing here so you'll have a nice rounded toe. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing here. And make sure you snip before your, don't cut into your sewing line, it's before that. Okay, so now this is how this works. I love this. You put the tube in like this. Oops. Let's make sure we put the tube in between. There, I got it. Okay, so you feed the tube all the way in. Then you take this little dowel that it comes with, and you push it through the tube. And it's pretty thick. And there you have it. Nicely turn. And then you take the dowel and you just push on the edges there, and see how nice and rounded that got, because I cut those slits along the seam line, and see how nice that looks. Okay, you're gonna do the same thing here. So let's show you how to do the arm. You do the same thing. You put the tube in, you push the arm through. And it's just because it's a little thick, because I put on that lace, so it's too thick for the tube, but you can just put it over like that. And then push your thumb up, and now push the rest of the fingers. See how that looks? It's not perfect, but hey, it's a little doll. It's homemade. I'm not really, to be honest, I do sew simple stuff. Whenever I go to the sewing center, I buy patterns that says easy, beginner. I don't really do the real heavy duty sewing. So sometimes my projects have that unique look, And this is one of them, but it actually will be nice. A little girl will love it. They're not looking at imperfection. They will actually love this little doll. And these will make perfect to give in a shelter. So, you know, every once in a while you see those angel trees and stuff like that, or you go to shelters and they're looking for toys and stuff. This is be so, I bet any little girl will treasure this, especially if you make them the doll and then you make an outfit that has the same fabric as the doll. I think that will be so adorable. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this one. Okay, so now I have this. So the next thing I need to do is pull my batting. And we can always go to Build-A-Bear, and I have them and borrow the machine from Build-A-Bear if we could. But this is kind of a little more tedious. It's just filling it with batting. That's the only thing. So that I don't really like about the project is just filling it with batting. So I'm going to fill my legs with the batting, and I shall be back. You just keep stuffing it until it's nice and fluffy. So let me fill it up and I'll be back. Okay, so I got everything stuffed. Now we need to put, before we sew this together, we need to put our hands and legs on our project. So you're going to put it this way. So notice the thumb is up, and notice that's in the angle. So I want with the angle going this way with the thumb up, and we're going to put this right here. And I'm going to put safety pins to hold it in place. And you want to put it fairly up. Right there. I'm leaving like a little, like a 1/4 of an inch between this seam and my arm starts. About there. Okay. Right there. And then you're going to do the same thing on this one. It's going to go this way. I'm going to measure so that it's nice and even, like a 1/4 of an inch. Yep. Or less. Just make sure it's even. That's all you have to kind of. And even if it's not, it's okay. Okay, so that goes there. And then these, you're going to sew it with the front foot up. You're going to sew that there. And it's just a little bit, just when the curve is starting to curve, I'm putting it in a little bit. The pattern doesn't have where to put it. You just got to use your best judgment. And as long as it looks good, it's fine. It's about same distance from the curve here as it is here, approximately. Same distance. Good enough. So let's review what we did. Okay, just because it's so important that you do it right, otherwise I hate ripping seams. So that's why I want to make sure that I review it. So this is the front. This is where the face is. This is the front. Okay. So my arms go with the thumb up and an angle this way. The angle is on top. Goes here. Then this is my second arm, goes there. My legs go with the foot, the front foot touching towards her face. Goes that way. And let's go ahead to the sewing machine and sew this thing together. Okay, so we got it. We got the arms and the legs sewn in. So she's starting to look good. So now, I'm going to put this up. Or actually, we can leave that down, but we're going to put this in. Now we're ready to place the back side of our doll. It goes in like here. So we're going to pin these around, and it's kind of tricky. And one trick that I use, because it's kind of thick here and it's thick on the other side, in some machines, if you don't have the real heavy duty needle, it doesn't go through. If you put both of this thickness down here, it's going to be very bulky for some of your needles. So I like to divide it up, but once I make sure my lace is facing down, that's not going to be cut up on the seam, I'm going to push this seam down, push this seam up, and then pin it. That way I distribute the bulk, so your poor little needle could go through it with no problem. Otherwise, your needle is going to have an issue with all that bulkiness in there. And then here, you're going to sew the arm right here. Okay. And then you're going to sew. Now, a lot of this is going to be hand sewn. So the bottom piece is going to be all hand sewn. So you're going to sew it up to the curve right here. The rest, once we stuff it, we're going to turn it over and then finish it with a nice running stitch underneath. And, you know, plus usually they don't see the bottom. Like this one, all that underneath, I did it by hand. So, they don't really see it. Okay, so now we're going to do this side. Now, if you're beginning to sew, what I recommend is maybe you want to run a real loose straight stitch, just a basting stitch throughout the whole thing instead of using pins, and then take it to your sewing machine. I've done that before too. But I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to start sewing. So here I'm at the sewing machine, and it's going to be tricky. That's why I say if you want to do a base stitch first, just so that way everything is together and doesn't fall apart, you can do that. But I'm just going to try it out without doing the base stitch. And I'm going to make sure I have a good seam allowance, the width of my presser foot. This is a little tricky here, so just make sure that you're not catching the extra material or your arms or your legs while you sew the whole body. And then give extra back stitch in the arms and in the neck area where it's going to have a lot of stress from daily play. And let's go back to my desk or my craft area. And let's see what we have. So I'm done with sewing the doll. Now let's go ahead and pull it inside out. You can use your little dowel. Oh, it's coming out cute. Actually, this one came out pretty cute. You know, I like it without the faces. Let's see. Ah, ain't that cute? It actually came out pretty amazing. Oh, see, notice here how that went up there? I wasn't that careful. And actually, I might just, let me go back. I'm going to rip this up and then fix it. I'll be back. Let's start stuffing it. So you put it over and then you just take lots of batting. Lots of batting. I mean, well, it depends. If you want a real stuff, maybe this one we don't want. We want the head very stuffed, but maybe the body we want it nice and soft. This one I really stuffed it. But maybe this one we want the head to be very, very stiff. So I really put a lot of stuffing mainly on the head area so that way I have a nice rounded head. And then I put not as much on the body area. I think this is good enough. Yeah. Yep. Good enough, good enough. So now, let me get some thread, and I think I'm going to use white thread. Now this is called Dressmaking Strong and Durable. So it's nice strong thread. Put my glasses on just to make sure I make it nice and neat. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start from the inside so that way I hide my knot inside. Now, I'm going to turn in the fabric so that way it has a nice seam. Gather it together, and then just sew. And just try to sew it as neat as you can, and just making sure that you don't hardly see any of the stitching line. But I'm not the best hand sewer, but it's gonna be hidden underneath the layers of either pants or skirt, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, so I am done with the body. She's a little more hippie on this side than that side, but hey, that's the charm of this doll. So one of the accessories that I did for this doll was I created a skirt using the same material as the shirt. And it was just a simple tube that I sewed on the side. I put some of the same lace. And then now I'm going to use elastic. So the way to put elastic on a skirt is that you create some kind of casing. So right now I'm just kind of getting rid of any of the extra thread. So you create a kind of casing, like you see there, and then you're going to make sure that your casing is wide enough to accommodate your elastic. And this is a thin elastic that I'm going to be using, and it's about a 1/4 inch. And what you do is you pin that measurement throughout. So you just pin all throughout a little seam allowance of like a 1/4 inch. And that's what I'm going to do throughout the whole skirt. And then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. And after I sew it, I do thread the elastic through that casing, and then I just sew it off. We have it at a sewing machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sewing, and usually I like to leave an opening around my casing area. So the seam area. So what I want to do is I want to start here. Excuse me. And to just carefully sew on the edge, and I kind of give you a closer look at what I'm doing. I'm just sewing on the edges, and you're going to make sure you're going to leave an opening so that way you can thread your elastic. And I'm going to need an opening here so that way I can take my elastic and finish the piece. Okay, so I'm back in my craft area, and I'm just going to stitch the elastic. Just some running stitch or basting stitch, whatever stitch, just anything to just keep it in place so it won't unravel. Now, it's not that important to make sure to, it's not, because it's a doll and it's not going to be used, so you don't have to kind of make sure that it's very, very secure, that it will not break apart. But if you were doing the same thing for something that's going to be used a lot, like a garment, then I usually use the sewing machine, because the sewing machine I can go back and forth and really make sure that it's not going to break or come apart. But for the doll, it's good enough. Okay. And now it'll just automatically sink in. So now we can go back to the sewing machine and stitch, close that area up. Or you can just do it by hand and close it up. So I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to close that up in the sewing machine. Okay. So now that you have it in place, you can either remove this if you have this and put the garment around if it fits, but mine doesn't fit, so let's go ahead and do it the more difficult way, which is to put it here. Okay. Put it on my machine. Okay. Make sure. It's a little more difficult this way, so if you wanna, you can probably wanna, it might be easier for you to hand stitch it. Go back and forth. And just put your needle down and pull it. Leave your needle down and pull this way. And that's done. Okay, so there's my little skirt. Let's go back to the craft room, to the craft table again, and let's try it on. Okay, so I'm trying it on and it looks fabulous. And it's nice and snug. Let's try on, maybe I'll give her this purse. Let's see how it looks. Looks pretty nice. So now the next thing I need to do is the face, but this video is pretty long, so if you want to know how to do the face. Hi, so I guess you enjoyed number 1 and number 2 part of my video. So now we're on the last of this video series, and it's how to create this face right here.